I feel so lucky to be not only a part of the Métis Nation in general, but also from here in Winnipeg, Canada. All of my work in one way or another centers around this place. I do think that where we come from, where we are, not only physically makes up what we are, literally from the food we eat to the water we drink to the air we breathe. Like we are who we are our land, we are our land place. But also the greater questions around how our ancestors came here. We're so lucky as Michif people. We come from such amazing kick-ass people. I always love to tell the stories of, only 3 armed insurrections against the government, ha ha ha. Because we just really were constantly resisting. We were resisting before resisting was cool. Just kidding, it was always cool. But it was just this place, and also, the greater parts of our homeland. Of course, there's someone who calls right at this moment. Um, at this place in particular, and of course all the other places in our homeland, but Winnipeg itself is just so beautiful. I've always been blessed to live very close to the waters, whether it be the Red River mostly, but also the Assiniboine, which are both completely different bodies of water with completely different personalities. The neighborhood where I grew up had these enormous trees, these American elm trees, and I got obsessed with them very early on in my life. And their history and their story, which is completely non-Indigenous to this place, is again one of those things that just led me on this down this poetry rabbit hole, and I never hope to get out of that. The personality, the history, one of my most famous favorite projects was a graphic novel series I did called A Girl Called Echo. And I did that specifically because I wanted to do a deep dive into our history, and I wanted to tell the story of a time traveling young superhero who's just an ordinary girl in this modern world. But she gets to go back in time and visit these places. So she visited the Pemmican Wars and the Red River Resistance and the Northwest Resistance, and then finally came back here to Winnipeg during it's called the Road Allowance era. So like in the early 1900s, when our people were living in, makeshift, very creative communities on Crown land. Um, because what a fantasy would that be, to be able to go back in time and hang out with the people that came before you, the people that literally made you, like as much as this land makes us, right? It's our ancestors who make us. And um, so I loved that process because of creating those graphic novels, because I actually had the excuse and the time to just dive into the histories and learn what actually happened and the factual truths, and not just the BS stories that my uncle and my dad used to always tell me about these places. Because I've been always very blessed to know who I am and know where I come from and know these kick-ass warriors that I come from. And that's the work of my dad and my uncles and my grandfather before them, who was an early member of the Union Nationale Saint-Joseph. Oh, I always say that word wrong. Okay, Union Nationale Métis Saint-Joseph, back in the 30s, where it was actually dangerous to be Michif and to say you're proudly Michif. And the history I was always told that it was that if we can pass, we did pass. And if we couldn't, like my grandfather, he was too dark. You just couldn't, and you were kind of destined for this, kind of marginalization your entire life. But my grandfather didn't accept that. And he was a proud person. He was a member of the Union Nationale. He did work very hard every single day of his life, and he taught his sons and his daughter, and in turn, they taught us, this next generation, how to be proud about who we are. And that's an amazing gift. And I consider it a privilege to hold that gift, because I know so many of us don't hold that gift. Um, and just like I consider it a privilege to be able to live here in this place in time. And as the world burns, we have a very imperfect city, but as the world burns around us, aren't we so lucky to be here? and to be at peace, and to, you know, be relative safety, or at least have, you know, this amazing community to hopefully feel safe in. I feel really, really grateful to be in this place. And yeah, and any excuse to go to Saint Laurent, right? Any excuse to hang out and have food get made for me, that I'm in.